I'm doing a little FMLA this week, guys, to care for an uncle who had a double knee replacement. I apologize, I cannot be there in person.
No worries. Okay, so we sent out an agenda, which I believe, in addition to some misinformation from me, had 3 items on there. And so our 3 items are just wanting to share with everybody a conversation that Jill and I had offline and Dr. Schumacher and I had about presenting that amended MOU regarding both compensation for secondary teachers who agree to teach a 6th section and regarding some work that has been done cooperatively with the district and specifically with Sherry Dummeline, our special education director, along with NEA-Shawnee Mission to address workload issues for really all special education staff, not just secondary, but just kind of making sure that, you know, workload reductions at the secondary don't ignore any, you know, group of people and that we're making efforts across the bar. So we had talked about potentially taking that to the this past Monday's board meeting, and then after the meeting, realized that Dr. Schumacher would not be at the April 26th meeting, and so I emailed Jill and said, well, you know, we'll wait till the May 9th meeting, and she responded and was like, well, how about we present together? And so just so everyone knows, that is the plan, is that at that board meeting, Jill and Dr. Schumacher will, I don't think it'll be anything lengthy, but give an explanatory background to the board about why we're amending this, and specifically explain that, you know, nothing substantive has changed in that MOU other than the addition of the language regarding workload for special education teachers. And I just, in our agenda, I linked that amended MOU just to remind everybody what we're talking about, because at this point in our negotiation season, we've done a lot of work and there are a lot of documents, so didn't want anyone to get lost. So yeah, if that sounds good to everyone, I'll give a thanks in advance to Jill and Dr. Schumacher, because it's always, at least I get a little nervous presenting to the board, so maybe you guys are used to it by now. But that'll be May 9th, and I will upload the fully executed MOU to our shared negotiations folder once I have it. The next thing, if you guys don't mind me just kind of continuing to lead here, is a homework assignment that I had following our last negotiations meeting was to memorialize all of the work that we have done regarding adequate prep time into a collective commitment. And so if you click on that link, I sort of followed a form that I had used previously for collective commitments, and I bulleted out the 4 things that we've done during this negotiation session to address workload issues. And then I believe we intended to, as we typically do, attach documents that are mentioned in the collective commitment or that are support this collective commitment to the document, so that it's all together. And I think even last year when we sent this out for ratification both directions, to the board and to our professional employees, we then had a group of, hey, here's all the work that was done in terms of not just a redlined P&A, but also collective commitments and MOUs, so that they could see those things. And so I don't know if anyone's had a chance to review this. I tried to kind of just take it word for word from our joint statements that have been done before. So not like really too much wordsmithing. It was mostly copy and paste from our joint statements. And I've attached, I've indicated attachments, and Jay, if you go into the folder for collective commitments for this year, I have PDFs of all of those, so that when you create the signature, you should just be able to marry all those PDFs together.
Yep.
So I guess if anyone has any revisions or adjustments, let me know. But otherwise, we can ask Jay to go ahead and create the signature version of that, and we can sign it. I would add the caveat that on all of these, we talk about, hey, these are things we are doing for the next school year, because that's the timeline of the negotiated agreement. There is no intention to like walk away from any of these things or have to renegotiate them year after year, just to make that clear.
Since we have the issue of physical aggression by students, and we have not really fleshed that, we haven't IBB'd that, do we want to wait to sign off on the collective commitments in case something comes from that discussion?
So I see this one as being limited to NEA 4, I think was prep time.
Okay, so this is just one issue. We might have additional, besides I see we have our collective commitments for our process, so,
Yeah.
excuse me, long day.
Nope.
Brain's a little foggy.
I know we might have some people watching, so I wanted to know, are you guys okay if I share my screen with
Oh,
the
yeah.
collective commitment?
And feel free to walk through it and identify kind of the 4 big areas that we worked on.
Yeah, so the arrival time, and I like that you had the procedure document attached as Exhibit A, which I opened up
Well, I have them in the folder.
here. And so it states that elementary schools open their doors for students at 7:50 a.m. Students are welcomed into classrooms at 8 a.m. with the school day starting at 8:10. So I like that sentence. I think that's great. And then at the bottom, it talks about if mitigating measures are no longer in place for the 22-23 school year, then schools should be able to return to the pre-pandemic morning supervision plans. So I just wanted to make that clear in case there are some people, elementary teachers, wondering. And then we have that student support hour, and that's Exhibit B that Dr. Sherman put together. Okay, let's see. I think you go further down, or is this just talking about reducing workload? Here you go. Student support options, talks about the do's and the don'ts. So we have a good list there. And we already fleshed that out. What is, mascot hour guidelines, which looks very similar to student support hour. And what's the last one? Oh, the amended MOU about teaching 6 classes versus 5. All right. To refresh my memory too, I wanted to go through all of those. Okay. Oop. It looks acceptable to me.
Awesome. So Jay, if you want to work your, whatever it is that you do,
Do you
create
want
signatures.
me to leave them as A, B, C, and D, or do you want one?
I think we want one, at the end of the day, we want one document, which is like a single PDF, which is the signed collective commitment, and then at the back, every single one of those exhibits.
If anyone did not get through reading and you're still going through it, let Rachel know. And Rachel, do you all do sort of round the room consensus on the collective commitments, or are you only really doing that when you do language changes?
No, we're doing it on everything.
Yeah.
Does everybody feel like they've had enough time, or do you want to wait till the end of the meeting to take a consensus? Okay, if we're okay. Awesome. Okay, so I think we're to our last agenda item, which should be our most involved one. So I'll hand it over to Dr. Schumacher.
Okay, and I'm going to ask the team to help me out with this, of course, but I'm going to try to broadcast or screen share. As I think everyone knows, or just as a reminder, we collectively met with our building principals a week and a half ago, Ms. Johnson was there to support the message to those principals. Dr. Gonzer and Mr. Lawrence put together a PowerPoint for them to use at the upcoming staff meeting, which was the next week, and that happened last Tuesday. So collectively, those principals delivered an exactly the same PowerPoint and a very similar message to their staff, and then issued a survey immediately after. Our team, our subcommittee met on Thursday of last week. And again, Dr. Gonzer helped us pull together the data, and we can share the data, but this is what, can everyone see my screen? Okay. We put together not a robust agenda, but an agenda nonetheless, and we put together some basics of the results. And so those are just some quick pullouts of the results. And so we had 4 different options, option 1, 2, 3, and 4. And you can see just by the numbers, taking all of the surveys into account, option 4 was 46%, 46.6%. Option 1, 28.7-ish. Option 2, 21.2. And then option 3, bringing up the rear at 3.5. Individual building totals, so if you just look at individual buildings and how they voted, 20 buildings, option 4 was number 1. 9 buildings, option 1 was number 1. 7 buildings, option 2 was first, and then none of the buildings had option 3 as their first choice. So after we took a look at the data, do we want to look at the data? Do you want to look at the data? Or is that enough for now? That's enough for now, okay. We had a good discussion, a lengthy discussion. I think it took the rest of the time. And I think I'd like other people to chime in at this point. So John and Dr. Gonzer, we have a couple proposals for you, but what else do you guys want to add?
Can you do a
Or Dr. Morgan, I'm sorry.
I know what you meant.
I'm sorry. Long day.
One good person.
Yep.
Can you provide the short summary of what option 4 and option 1 and 2 were?
Option 4 is 20-minute PLC every week, and then 2 weeks of the month, so weeks 1 and week 3, there's a 45-minute PLC during staff meeting time.
Option 4 right now would not require a language change.
Option 2 is weeks 1 and week 3, you'd have your personal plan, and you'd have a 45-minute PLC during staff meeting time. And then the other weeks, you would do a 40-minute PLC during your plan period time with staff meeting.
A 40-minute
PLC during plan time.
Got it. Okay.
And that would be, you would not have the 20 minutes each week, so it's kind of like you'd be banking 20 minutes of your PLC from the first week and doing a longer one the second week. Do you want option number 1 too?
I thought that,
That was option 2 that I just said.
okay, yeah, and
Option number 1 would be PLC time would be during plan periods every week. But then 2 weeks, you would have your personal plan time during staff meeting.
thank you for that reminder. I know it's hard to summarize. Oh, I'll put it over here.
So one of the things that we talked about quite a bit as a team was just that the similarities between options 1 and 2 is that we have teams meeting every single week for at least 40 minutes. And the goal, I think, the research states that, meeting as close to 60 minutes as you can was kind of the overall team's goal. So we were excited to see that when you looked at options 1 and 2, the majority of those two options were picked, 49%, or I don't know what the average is for. Those two things. But just kind of what we thought would be next steps moving forward was kind of where a lot of our discussion was. And I don't know that we had one best answer. Because a lot of it was how do we support where teams currently are, but also how do we align ourselves with best practices according to research.
We spent a little bit of time talking about our belief that the PLC Institute this summer is really going to help our staff understand the why we're asking for this additional time, and that if we were to survey them after that there may perhaps be more buy-in for either option 1 or option 2 rather than option 4.
So I think that with almost half the teachers voting for option 4, I really think that shows that they don't want to have their planned time after the student contact day, at least for that group. A big goal of our association, I feel like over the last 4 years or so, has been to try to add more planned time, not less. And I know that a PLC is time spent to break down your standards and see what needs to be taught. Is it mastered? What do we do when it's not? But that plan time that we get, that's when we call our parents and let them know how the students are doing. That's when we grade their homework or plan the assignments, set up our classrooms. And so I would just really struggle with picking an option that would take away that plan time. Which, like for option, I think maybe 1 and 2, you end up with less than 230 minutes a week of plan time. So, anyway.
During the school day, right?
Yes,
Right.
during the school day.
Because the plan time is added in lieu of the staff meeting.
Right. There's at least one, though, where it's, I think it's option 2, where because you're having a PLC during your plan during one of the weeks and you're not getting that plan time made up. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, like on the days when you're going to have a PLC during your plan, you're kind of going to go the whole day with just that 25-minute break for lunch until the student contact day is over. And I know we worked to change that, like back in 2017, when we were saying like our specials teachers were teaching 7 classes in a day. They were seeing 7 different classes in a day, so they were only getting a break in the day for lunch. And so we wrote language so that that wouldn't happen anymore. We also have, secondary teachers talking about when if they have a block day where they're teaching all 4 blocks, that's another, that's a difficult day because you only get a 25-minute lunch as your break. And I know that there are people probably at this table that don't take a break for lunch, but I don't think that means that it's right or appropriate, like to have a teacher either teaching all day or being in a meeting and only having a 25-minute break during that day. Right. And I think PLCs can even happen not even when you're sitting in the meeting. Like, I think Linda said this before. We'll be walking to the bathroom and I can be almost PLCing.
Oh, Lord.
I didn't mean to make that funny. With a teacher to say, how did that test go? What questions did they miss? And, that kind of thing. Or even at lunch. I mean, our lunch conversations reflect around testing and that kind of thing. So I know it's really important to try to get to 60 minutes a week. But I also think, I don't think it should be at like taking away the plan time to get there. Do you know what I mean? Like during the student contact day.
So I think the entire subcommittee gets the apprehension, and none of us were surprised. We actually asked the question, were any of us surprised by the results of the survey? And none of us were. I mean, it's, our teachers, we haven't sold the PLC process enough yet for them to understand that the benefits that we believe will come from this give. And it's a give, right? I mean, I think we need to recognize that. It's a give, it's an ask. We also tried to make sure that the administrator voice was heard too. Not that that matters as much, but that's valuable. Maybe that's incorrect, but that's valuable staff time, or those staff meetings are valuable time for our administrators, right? To deliver PD, to get messages out, things like that. And so we spent a lot of time talking about the not competing interests, but the different gives that we're asking from the administration to give up one of their staff meetings, and also clearly from the teachers to change the dynamic or the look of what their plan time looks like. So the team collectively came up with some overarching statements, and I don't know if again either I can lead, or Dr. Morgan or Mr. Dirks. We came up with a couple overarching statements and then 2 proposals for this team to consider. So I don't know if you guys want me to keep talking.
Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead. Yep.
Want to flesh out how we're going to IBB this, because bringing a proposal is not IBB. So I think we can hear things to consider, but I think this group is charged with, in IBB, to come up with solutions as well. And so to me, this is a deviation from our collective norms and this process. And if the group wants to do it that way, that's fine. I understand there's been a lot of work that's gone in from the strategic plan subcommittee, and value everybody's time and effort, but we're not being true to the process.
So I understood that when we assign, and maybe we don't have a common understanding on this, because I think about the structure the same way I would as when like the board has a subcommittee that it assigns work to, and the committee comes back and says, this is our recommendation, and the board will review it, and they will have deliberations on it, and they either accept it or they don't. And if they don't, then it gets sent back for more work. And so that's how I understood it here, is that we were saying, hey, this is a lot of work to be doing, a lot of data that needs to be gathered, a really complex system for coming up with possible solutions. So we're going to assign the work to this subcommittee to be done, to come back with a recommendation, and then if we don't agree to it, then it has to go back to the subcommittee.
This isn't a subcommittee like our salary schedule subcommittee or our supplemental salary subcommittee, which is made up from members exclusively of this team. And this strategic plan committee, subcommittee, has been in place working long before this year's IBB process began. So I think it's different.
I'm going to jump in here quick. It didn't raise any red flags for me. It may be the word proposal is a little triggering in terms of it sounds like a traditional way to bargain, but I didn't see proposal as a proposal, because the entities that are both engaged or committed to the master agreement are the district and the association, not a third party as in a committee. So a committee can't or doesn't really propose. I assumed that maybe the word proposal was recommendations, which I've seen you guys take recommendations in the past for consideration. Can I get from Mike and anyone else that was on this committee, how did you all think bringing these proposals forward to the team, how did you see the process working, or what were your expectations in terms of response, or who owned it after this meeting? Can we hear that from you all?
I mean, I think this was discussed a little bit in the committee. I don't know, Don, if you want to But what I heard discussed was that we were going to, take the data and the research and make some recommendations to the IBB team so that they could work through it to see if there were going to be contract language changes or how to make it from an idea into fruition. That was my understanding. Not that the committee was saying, like, here's what IBB has to do. They were just giving the recommendations to the IBB team.
That was my thoughts also.
I actually, and I'm glad you asked the question. I actually remember one of the team members asking, so are we making a decision here? And we're like, absolutely not. We are bringing some ideas to the IBB, and it could end up not anywhere close to what we are suggesting, or if we use the wrong language, I apologize, but it was just, these are our ideas for this group to start with, was, I think, our subcommittee's thinking.
I guess I would have envisioned too, like, again, I'm just thinking of like a board policy proposal we had last Monday. There was a board member that said, I'm not comfortable with this, proposed an amendment. The discussion of the amendment was discussed, and then it passed with that modification. And I think we potentially could do the same thing here. We could talk about it. We don't have a consensus, so the committee's got to work more, or we just have an impasse on that issue. Or we could, certainly I think, do the solution brainstorming part of the process. That this is one based on the data that comes from this source, but people have others. So I would certainly be open to talking about other solutions and not just this one suggested one out of the committee.
So there's just one suggestion. There's not scrolling down, there's not additionals.
We have two different suggestions.
Okay, well, then I'm open to hearing those, but I still am reluctant on the process because I don't want to get to impasse on this issue. I think figuring out a PLC solution for elementary is important, but I've made my feelings really strong about, I would say that teachers would be sacrificing something really big in plan time. So that would be, if we were going through and what our interest would be, I would be expressing that that's an interest that I have, that teachers not lose plan time. I'm just trying to be upfront so everybody
Plan time
knows.
during the contract day.
Because I don't
Or, I'm sorry,
consider,
during student
as the
contract
contract
hours.
is written now, plan time does not exist after the contract day, after the
contract.
student day, yeah.
Right.
These solutions all begin with even at the end of the contract day.
So if you remember, folks, just to kind of get us so that people aren't confused, so that the group's not confused about how I would facilitate this, although you do a lot of self-facilitation as a group, I'm assuming that you all are taking the legwork and the information that this committee did, you're hearing about it, you're getting the survey results, there are, I think, deeper survey results you can look at, and then the committee is telling you, based on this data, based on what we looked at, here's two things we would recommend. Two options we would recommend. I'm assuming that you all, as a whole committee, you all, the IBB team, these are two options. You may come up with others, but you've already framed and focused the issue. You've already identified interest, and Lindsay can pull those when it comes time for you all to decide which solution or combination of solutions you're going with. You'll need to still look back at interest. Does it meet our interest? Right? And you still have to figure out, is it feasible, manageable, affordable, right? So you're still going to choose a solution to the PLC elementary issue through the IBB process. I'm saying this as some deeper, richer, more detailed work that was done to supplement the work you're doing here, and two recommendations coming out of that for your consideration. So that's how I was sort of seeing facilitating this, sort of hear the whole thing, and then if these two recommendations aren't settling well for everyone as an easy fix, then you're probably going to want to re-review your interest and see what other ideas you have. And the other ideas could be versions of the two recommendations or not. So that's how I was sort of seeing facilitating this. It's just sort of a deep dive the committee did for the IBB team to be able to make a decision on this. Does that sound like an acceptable way to approach this, or what do people think?
Well, I think the hard part is I think the committee has tried to make recommendations, and every time we try to bring forth possible solutions, it feels like members of the team are shutting down those potential solutions to have discussions around them before we can share them. I just want to be honest with where I stand. I mean,
And I think that the reason I kind of feel like I might want to shut them down, I guess that's the way, I mean, that would be the way I guess I was coming across, is that because it's taking away plan time from our teachers. And I keep looking at like other school districts that have more minutes per week with their plan time than ours. Like we get 230 for elementary a week, and Olathe has got 270, Blue Valley has 265, Lawrence is 255.
but isn't part of the process, right? If we're going to be true to the process, part of the process is not shutting down ideas until you can discuss them, right?
Okay.
I mean, that would just, I mean, I would just ask that the team could be open to hearing some of the work from the committee and some of the suggestion recommendations so that we can have an honest conversation around them instead of just automatically saying that solution's not possible because of this preconceived notion that already exists.
Well, and I just needed clarification that those weren't the only options we were going to do. And I still don't feel like we've gone through the process. I can't help the way I feel. That's me, but I'm open to hear what you have to say. And we'll see where it leads us. We might be wowed by it.
So Lindsay, will you do me a favor? We're going to be.
Lindsay's not here.
Oh, shoot. Lindsay took notes. When we IBB'd this, Lindsay took notes. We IBB'd to the point of problem solving. And I think that if you look back on our notes that Lindsay took, you already, and not that nobody is here to restrict anything. My goal as a facilitator is to open dialogue, not restrict it, right? Not limit, but to open, right? So if you look back on Lindsay's notes, and we remember when we IBB, we can revisit any section of it, right? Was the issue statement right? Were all the interests represented or put out there, right? And you all even came up with some initial elementary school ideas, and one of them, I believe, was the elementary committee, this committee, do more work. So I think that was a piece of your problem solving. So, we're not pulling away from that IBB structure. We're just on that piece where now you're hearing what the committee is recommending after this last piece of work that they've done. And then I think you're going to come back and you're going to look at, I don't know if Rachel can find it, look at what Lindsay wrote. She was doing really good under possible solutions for elementary. And you're going to start saying, okay, do we have everything up there on that wall, if you will, as a possible solution? And then you're going to start process of elimination like we always do. Which ones won't work and why? And remember, if they're not going to work, it means they didn't meet the interest, or they're harming an interest, right? Or they're not manageable, affordable, or feasible. So you guys are still going to process this out. We're just not there yet. I think we're just getting an explanation of a couple possible solutions.
Okay, so
we're going to go back and look at all of them.
So I'm going to go back to, this did not, and I'm not against the process, but the process worked that there was a strategic plan committee working on this. And when this, way back when, this was looking at late starts for PLCs. And so looking through this interest, we don't have safe plan time because that was not what we were working on a year ago. Then it became evident that the late start would not become an option for elementary because of the impact it would have on families, getting transportation and such. And so I feel like the interests expressed here are from either from that team or from a time when this issue was no longer looking at late starts as an option, because there's nowhere on here where our interest says, and it would be an interest of the association that we don't lose plan time.
Okay, so I'm going to pause there for a second. Number one, I don't have the benefit of the history or the actual disadvantage of the history that you're carrying right now, because I haven't heard the two recommendations. So I'm assuming you've scrolled forward in the document, or you're seeing something.
No, I'm looking at.
I don't know. I haven't heard late start as a recommendation yet. It may be coming.
No, I'm looking, Stephanie, I'm looking at the document that Lindsay took notes on. And that's what I'm saying. You said we could hear I'm just making a note. You said we can take these proposals and
I
take
wouldn't
them
call it a
against the
proposal. I would
interests.
call it a recommendation. And I can't see that document yet. So a couple things. Number one, if you want me to facilitate, I'm going to facilitate sort of strong now. And I'm going to ask that we stick on hearing the recommendations with an acknowledgement that I heard two people from that committee say, we didn't assume that these are proposals and we didn't assume that we tell the IBB what to do.
Okay, but.
Is that right?
But
So it would
Stephanie,
be recommendations, but so I want to say that. Then the other thing is I would fail if I didn't correct you, just like if somebody here from the district continued to call positions interest. When we did training, every time you guys have identified your interest, I challenge you a little. So when we say, you know, the interest of the district is no late start, or the association is no late starts, or don't take away plan time, I'm going to make you say, what is the interest behind that? That's a position.
but.
You got to say the interest and get the interest up there, right?
But Stephanie,
The
you
interest-
just said that we're going to listen to the work of the committee, and we're going to go back and look at the interests we generated. And
Right,
what
but
I'm
you're
saying,
looking at them and nobody else is, unless you guys are. I'm not. I'm facilitating and I can't see. I can see what's on the
I'm
screen.
sorry, I don't have a district computer, so I can't share either, so I'm
Right,
just
but we're not
looking.
there yet.
But
We're not
you,
there yet.
okay, fine. I'm
Unless you
just saying
guys-
what you said,
let
I
me- Let me
don't,
verify. I may have been spacing out. Did you guys already give those two recommendations and I absolutely missed them?
No, not
Mike?
yet.
Did you guys give the recommendation?
No, they
I
haven't
missed them,
given the
or people in room
recommendations
are
yet.
able to scroll and see them and you're ahead of me.
No, we have not.
Okay, so I'm just waiting to hear the recommendations, and then my next thing, if I was in the room or not, or whether you raised an issue or not, just my natural next way to facilitate is, Lindsay, can you pull up the IBB sheet from this issue? That'd be my natural next move, Linda. I just didn't hear the recommendations.
Does anyone have those with, okay, so it looks like John has it, and he should be able to.
You wanna,
Oh, there.
Oh, are you
Oh,
talking-
no, the interest, the notes that have the interest. And certainly if we look at those, and I think we've had a practice that if we feel like we did not, an interest is not captured from either
Okay.
side, I'd certainly be willing.
Right, you're able to, I think you're able to go back and
Yeah.
put, I think that you're able, we've always said, this process is not linear. It means sometimes we'll step back and say, hey, no, this interest was not up there. But I do want to say, and I would say it for no matter what issue came up or what perceived side the issue came from, the interest is not a position. The interest is the reason behind your position. So if the position is no late starts, there are interests behind that. School, breakfast, drop-offs, parent satisfaction, logistics with parents, but it can't just be the interest is no late starts. You have to say what the interests are, right? Or the interest of, not taking away PLC time. That is a position, no take away PLC time. There are interests behind that. I'm not shutting that down, but making an interest. The interest is not competitive PLC time with the other districts, what I heard Jill just now say, right? It may be teacher satisfaction. It may be a philosophy or a commitment that you guys agreed to in the past, right? But so don't put positions under your interest. That's a game. That's a game, right? And you may not know you're playing it, but that's a traditional bargaining game, that your interest is a position. Your positions are there for a reason. You guys are good. You don't just make up these positions arbitrarily. But I will ask you, if you're going to revisit your interest, you do have to peel back your position and identify the interest behind it. That's what's going under interest. So with that, I know you guys are kind of in the room, and I hate that I'm at a disadvantage. I'm just confused in terms of we're jumping back to compare the recommendations to interest before we've heard the recommendations. And I'm assuming that's because Linda and Jill know the recommendations. I, as a facilitator, have not heard them. And I don't know if the other folks in the room just know them as well. I don't know that.
I've not seen them, I've not read them, I've not scrolled down. I'm just trying to identify the process and where I felt we went off kilter. Sorry if I offended you, I'm an
No,
open
that's
book.
okay.
and
No,
I'll
no,
tell
no,
you that.
you didn't offend me. I just want to be able to be effective. My frustration is coming out of me being virtual today, I'll be honest. And I'm sorry, Linda, if that comes back like I'm frustrated with you. Okay, so no, I'm just a little frustrated with the nature of me being virtual and feeling a little like I'm a little off kilter on where y'all are, so.
It was harsh
yeah,
and it ramped me up a little bit, FYI.
What?
I said your response was a little harsh and it ramped me up a little bit.
Well,
Yeah, I apologize for that, guys. I have my sincere apology on that.
do we
And
maybe
want to take like a 5-minute break?
fix our
Technology too?
Sorry, I accept my apology, I hope, whoever, I think that was John or Jay. And Linda, certainly I was reacting to my frustration and certainly not your questions. And I apologize for that. So 5 minutes, I'll see everybody at 10 after.
Sounds good. We are back on, and I'm not sure where we are next, perhaps just moving on with just the presentation from what happened at the last PLC subcommittee meeting, and then we can start going through wherever we left off in the IBB process.
Okay, so here's the interest that Lindsay had written down from the last time. Increase the amount of time available for PLCs to meet at middle school and elementary school levels. Honor the work done by the subcommittee. Develop a research-based, research-supported solution. Develop a solution that does not detrimentally impact our SMSD families. Develop a solution that does not compromise adequate supervision, student supervision. Make PLC process authentic. Provide time to allow PLCs to meet. Provide elementary with the same amounts of time secondary gets. Not create inequities for families, start times, unsupervised times, community buy-in. Not create supervision challenges for staff, staff buy-in for solution, being able to collaborate with others in your building that teach the same content grade level as you, share the load, work smarter. PLC is the most consistent mechanism for moving student learning forward. PLC is our platform for viable curriculum. Strategic plan has made a commitment to PLCs, provide opportunities for singletons to PLC across buildings and within buildings with grade level classroom teachers. And so we sent it back to the subcommittee to survey staff members at the elementary level. We had 800, 900.
I think you guys first met though, right, and brought back some options. That was the first time you guys met?
And that's when we came up with, on the 11th, we came up with these different
Right.
options that we were going to take back to staff because Dr. Morgan met with principals at the principals meeting to share the information, and then the next following Tuesday at staff meetings, were presented the information to complete the survey. 802 elementary staff members completed the survey.
Is that John or is that Jay?
John.
John, thank you. Would you scroll back up a
I
little
think
bit?
I have a little bit more bass in my voice, but just a skosh.
And a little bit more up. I just want to see our from step one. Okay, and then scroll back down under interest. Okay. And then keep going down. Okay, so yeah, I just wanted to see. So we do have a chunk of interest there. It's interest in notes, right? Lindsay, I think, captures a lot of y'all's discussion. And then the first time you did this, where it says committee proposal solution, I think that's when you did hear something back from this committee. You all had some reservations. You gave that feedback to the committee and then sent the committee back again. Is that what that first set of solutions looked like?
Yeah, because I think your original proposal was to have the PLC during plan time and then make up your plan time during a staff meeting time. And so then I think we asked you guys to go meet again. And that's when you came up with the 4. So I think we didn't include an interest about not decreasing plan time because when we first were looking at this, we weren't even thinking that that would be an option. Like we didn't think that we would replace plan time with a PLC. Do you know what I mean? So I think that's what Linda was trying to get across, that we didn't have plan time as one of our interests.
And so I'm wondering if that would be fleshing out when we talked about staff buy-in. And to me, I think going back to Stephanie's comment about, which, I mean, I always have this challenge, again, because like going back to our team training, I'm such a direct communicator. So I think the issue is adequate, not just adequate, ensuring that the solution doesn't impact the adequacy of plan time, but also the, I don't know what word you would say, the ability to be effective during that time, to a degree that we think we're not going to have staff buy-in. Is that like maybe a way to say it? Is
I think part of the problem is as this has gone, the goalposts moved slightly, and we didn't go back and see if we needed to add interest based off of new
Gotcha.
information. And I
Gotcha.
think that is the hiccup right now. And I think that we should, I'm taking a breath, pause, listen through the rest of it, and I think we do need to take a minute after that and look to see if there's any interest that we missed due to the fact that things changed over time and that it just changed and we need to revisit it.
Sure. Yeah, I think we need to know all the interest that might be there, certainly from our professional employees. And there'll be administrative interest as well, right? I mean, adequate staff meeting time is another thing we need to test this against. Is removing 2 meetings, is that going to leave enough? Because you're right, this is not where we started. I think everybody was just making assumptions that we would be able to make some progress on late start like we have in our other levels, and we just hit roadblocks with that we couldn't find a way to get over, and we did shift. So I'm certainly open to going back and carefully going through all those interests and making sure we have everything there we need to check and look at.
So the survey that went out was this. Obviously choose your building. And then they were presented with all 4 options with this table as, you see all that blocked on my screen here. With all 4 options, with all the information from each. And that's where we got our information after the survey results. Option 4 had 46.
I'm sorry, can you quickly, because I'm so visual, grab those percents
You wanna
and
just
throw
see
it
this?
on this chart with,
This is the actual Google form survey.
Is there a way we can
Yeah, I can do it, hold on.
Option 4 was 46.
so like, yeah, right after option 4 there, if it just had the percent below it or something, then it would help me out a lot.
Oh, that's a PDF.
Oh, all right, never
I
mind.
think it's a screenshot.
Where's the recommendation?
The recommendation.
Where's the final recommendation, what's that column?
46,
Oh, here.
28.
Copy. Here, I'll just put it in there. Nope, that's not it. That's a presidential award link. Nope. Copy did not work.
I know. Your online shopping link.
No.
It's fine, man, I'll survive.
No, it's hard for me too. I'm having trouble writing the joint statement and keeping everything straight because. Oh, nice.
Okay, well, it won't.
Right click it, or do a 2-finger right click. And is there a way to make it so it's not behind text, but it's in
In the front of the text at the bottom,
or something like that?
black dot.
I can't see
You
it
can come
because
back
I
all
got the
data
what?
and stuff with the recommendations. It's possible
Oh,
solutions,
oh,
just
do you see those little
like-
things?
Black dot in the middle of this.
It's at the bottom left corner, and there's,
That one?
No,
I think you want behind,
far right.
I'm pretty good at that. It's my number 1 calming strategy with kids.
and then you might be able to move it
Oh.
around.
Okay, well, I'll just delete it later. Okay.
No, that's perfect.
Well,
we go.
actually, hold on.
And-
Here. Wrap.
No.
Well,
No,
and
undo that.
So,
No, it'll be fine. It'll be fine.
The-
Well, let me shrink it down a little bit. There you go. See, it's all right there.
Reasons I don't screen share the rec. 300.
There you go.
and
Zoom in. Voila.
I know the way that when you were presenting this, Abby, you were talking about the amount of PLC time they would get each week, right? So then I was trying to look at the amount of plan time they would get each week as well, just to like wrap my brain around, what that would look like. So I don't know
Option
if we want
4
that
would
too.
have no change in what they currently have. They
Right.
would still have 230
30.
minutes of plan time.
Right, but 1 and 2, because of the weeks where you have a PLC during your plan, but you still have a staff meeting, those weeks you'd only get 200 minutes. Because you get 4 days of 50 minutes.
210 minutes.
Well, you can't count the 10 minutes because in our agreement, you can only count plan time if it's 20 minutes or more.
I think I believe the talk on that one was, since you're not having the 20 minutes from the week before, you would be having 250 that week, and it would just roll over to the next week.
Can you just share the recommendations from the committee?
But even
So we can at
so-
least, then maybe that would be the better time to,
Okay.
I just, Like, can we just-
Recommendation number 1, buildings would choose between options 1 and option 2 as a pilot, which option 1 and option 2 would both be, option 1 would be the no staff meeting or personal plan period would go to staff meeting time. Option 2 would be the 40-minute plan, or 40-minute PLCs during plans every other week, and the PLC during staff meeting time every other week. Pilot it for 1 year to sunset at the end of next year. The rationale behind it was that about 49% of the staff surveyed liked those two options. It was similar to option number 4. We did say in here that option 4 was a clear individual choice, but the committee wishes to support the PLC research and believe perhaps with buy-in after the conference would change this. Out of the 9 people who were on that meeting, there were 5 people who voted or would prefer recommendation number 1. Recommendation number 2 is similar. It's adding option 4 as a pilot. We basically were not recommending anything with option number 3. Option 4 is plan time and everything is normal now, with 45 minutes during PLC, or for PLC during staff meeting twice a month. Again, pilot it for 1 year. On that one, option 4, again, was the highest individual choice. 4 subcommittee members preferred that one. It varied a lot by buildings. At some buildings, there is a high consideration or consensus for either option 1 or option 2.
Can you give us the individual percentages for each of those 4 options?
As a building,
No, I don't want to know building. I want to know percentage of people that did
46%.
36%.
46% chose option 4. Ooh.
44% of individuals?
Yes. The individuals is
46.
up there at the top where it says elementary totals.
I can't see the document. I can see it now, so I see it there, but
These are the individual totals. As buildings, 20 buildings had an overall support of option 4, 9 buildings had an overall support of option 1, 7 buildings option 2. I don't believe there were any with 3.
But when you got to your 20 buildings that wanted option 4, was that just a straight 51% meant the building went for it?
Do you want me to share? I have it up. Yep. And
We all have younger
I
eyes.
can't zoom.
Will you have that little 100% thing where you can drop down?
Yep, I hit the wrong thing.
Okay. Okay.
Oh, what am I doing?
Yeah, so a lot of our discussion around
Close your pivot table.
trying to give honor to 1 and 2 is that we had some buildings who overwhelmingly preferred it. So if you look at,
I'm gonna call these pivot tables.
yeah, like
You can use my.
Apache's at 77%, Brookridge is at 88%. I mean, there's some Neiman 71%.
So theoretically, there's some buildings that have fully adapted and PLCs work very well at, and maybe the ones that are lower functioning, or,
Or I can tell you, I think there are buildings that don't have 4 staff meetings a month. So this is a loss. They already don't have 4 staff meetings a month, so they're gaining nothing and losing plan time. I also wonder if it's a big reach, because we didn't ask the question in research. If you did vote for number 2, do you like number 1? They didn't vote for number 1. They voted for number 2. I think we're just assuming, since they're similar, that you would have buy-in on that.
I think that was the reason the committee felt strongly that it might be best at a building level decision versus making one decision for the entire school district.
And I think that's difficult when you're changing contract language to not have everybody having the same experience.
I think it's difficult having a building decide, because there's always going to be people that didn't agree with that decision. But also, I feel like the staff can change a lot, right? From year to year, you might go to a different building, so then you have a building doing something different than you did previously. But I do think what Jay said, where you, like, if you see like 77% at Apache, maybe that indicates that the PLCs are functioning well, they have autonomy, they're taking control of those PLCs during their plan time, and
Yeah, and I don't think we should make any assumptions about what a building's, you know what I mean? Like, I think, I just don't want the assumption to be if you say that about one building, then what you're by default saying about another building is that they didn't choose this or that. That means that they're, not. I just want to be fair to all the buildings and where
Yeah,
they
I
are
agree with
and what
Abby. I don't
they're
think we can draw assumptions from why anybody voted the way they did. All you have are numbers there, and we're trying to say, well, this shows one thing or another. I do like the idea of a pilot. I do like the idea that, it either sunsets in a year, or that we agree collectively as a team that we'll come back and look and see if we want to continue with that, or pilot something for the next year without, I don't know if we can do this. Legal, can we agree to do that doesn't have to be someone's
I can do
option?
anything. Emily.
Okay.
I can work magic.
Yeah, I know that. That's why I'm looking straight at you.
I can write it that way. I do, again, because we had several people express, are we doing this through the IBB process? I don't want to jump too quickly to anything, and I do think we should test the 2 recommendations against interests and just make sure we've had that full discussion as we look at them. So, okay, so to clarify, one thing that we would need to talk about and test against interests would be buildings get a choice between 1 and 2 as a one-year pilot, right?
That's for a recommendation. What recommendation 2 has option 4 in there as well.
Okay. Is everybody, these things, I cannot get my head straight. So I just want to make sure everybody.
And if I could just add, I think as the subcommittee deliberated on this, we really felt strongly that option 1 and 2 were the best choices for moving PLCs forward in the district, but we also saw the great need and value in getting buy-in with the staff. And that's why we started with recommendation 1, and then we created recommendation 2, assuming that if we gave, people 96% of our surveillance an option of the choice that they made, we could help get that buy-in, test it out. They would go to the PLC conference. After a year, maybe we vote again, and it's different, and there's more buy-in at that point. So,
because your subcommittee was 5 for option 1 and 3, and 4 for option 4. Is that what you?
And if I remember right with those subcommittee votes, I believe that there were some for recommendation 1 only because they were basing off of what the research says, not necessarily.
And that's where
Like
I was
plan.
at. I voted for 1, but if you're looking strictly for buy-in, I changed my vote to recommendation 2.
I'm pretty sure I was text to speak, speak to text at that point, so.
I even wonder if we could have a mid-year semester check on it, after a semester of doing an option.
We said that in recommendation 2 about option 4. Again, we're being assumptive, if that's a word, but we feel like, what's the word?
Presumptive.
Presumptive? There you go, that's better. That once people, again, go to the institute, experience some true PLC, some guarded time, then perhaps they'll want to change.
But that change would be good data that we would bring back as we begin the IBB process next year, and then do a vote on it again, and maybe next year, I do believe in that PLC Institute. Like I said, it was some of the best professional development, and we are going to have people that haven't gone, so I think not setting that up for, I don't want to say failure, but struggles, because not everybody's going to be coming in with the buy-in, but I think as they work the process, you can convince people to join in over time, over that year.
Is it kind of like a chicken and an egg problem? Like, you don't know if you like food until you try it? Like,
I think that I will tell you, as someone who was part of a functioning, really highly, in my opinion, functioning PLC, that we PLC'd way beyond the PLC time we had, because we found value in it, and we found that it, in many ways, it eased the work we had to do. We didn't start out that way. Our experience had to grow over time. So yes, I think that let's not set this up where, in some people's mind who are not where other people are in the PLC process, they see this as a loss. I'm not trying to doom in any way the PLC process. I'm a big supporter of it, but I also have a very view of all different type of people that we work with.
it's a group project essentially, right? So you gotta have a strong group, otherwise somebody does a lot of work and somebody benefits. Is that too simplified?
Well, I don't think it's that. You have to have buy-in.
Okay. To how they're
Well, and the
supposed
group
to-
has to have the freedom to do the work.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay.
Do we have, I know the expert on this isn't in this room, but do we have an idea of how many elementary people have signed up?
We just got a number this morning. I think it was out of little over 2,000 certified employees. I think we had 1,200 of our staff, approximately, maybe a little bit less than signed up. So we're probably at, maybe 60% of our staff are signed up for PLCs.
My guess would be that probably is heavily weighted towards elementary, just because they haven't had that designated time, maybe middle schools as well, high schools being, I'm not saying high school wouldn't go, but we are deeper into the time, having the time.
I'm sure we can break down those numbers and get accurate percentages, but I think we're a little less than 60% for the whole district on certified employees. In fact, we've opened it up to outside districts.
I'm texting the experts right now. We'll see what we can find.
I think having lived in PLC world for a lot of years as a teacher, like Linda, I think the PLC process is a developing one. And one of the things that I've learned is that it's got to be with some autonomy with the teachers to drive that learning. It's got to be around those 4 essential questions. And you got to have the right people in the right seats in the bus. Because forced collaboration is worse than no collaboration. And so it's got to be that buy-in from those teachers that understand the process, how it works, and it's driven towards improving student learning and targeting interventions and really buying into it. And I think you get to a point where those teams that are high functioning have that buy-in, and they'll want to PLC more than they want to plan when it comes down to it. And I think right now, my perception, and I don't know, because I'm solely at the secondary level, but my perception is that a lot of people are trying to make decisions about this plan, and they don't understand the process the way it's supposed to be done. And I think that's an important piece of it, in understanding what that time is and how crucial that is for what works. So I am optimistic about the PLC Institute and what we can do to leverage that to improve our student learning. But I also think that it's got to be driven around the right purpose in that time.
And I like what you said, the autonomy, I think is very important. We hire the best staff, right, in this area, and that's what, I remember Michael Schumacher saying at the beginning of the year to all the new hires, we need to trust that they are professionals and that they can run a PLC. Occasionally I'll hear that it just feels like a meeting being run by someone else in their building, like an administrator or an instructional coach. And not all the time, but enough that they don't feel like they're in charge of it. And I just don't want that to happen, because then they're not buying into the PLC, right?
So do we want to try and test these against the interests and see what we feel on both of these? If we want to try and walk away from one and then test again, like the remaining one?
I heard mention of adding some interest or reviewing interest. Do we want to do that first?
Yeah.
So guys, while you're here, can I jump in just for a second while you're on this screen? Is everybody okay with that?
Yeah.
Okay, so when Lindsay started taking notes, when you all started this year, it replaced me. In person, it would be a wall flip chart that I would take notes. Then the year you were online, I would open a Word doc and take notes. And then Lindsay sort of started just picking that up and did a pretty good job at that. And I've not been over facilitating, you guys. I've kind of been under facilitating. So while we are going through interest, if there are moments that I'm not going to be saying that interest is not right or that's not an interest, I'm going to be a little more facilitative about how I might have written it in a way that is truly an interest. Because you all as a team, I want you to have your heads around the fact that interest allow for alternative solutions and positions don't. It doesn't mean that a position is not an interest. It means you actually have to peel it back one layer to name the interest. So as you're going through the current interest, we'll see if there's any that need clarification so that I'm not, by my silence, teaching you that people can put deal breakers like we on the interest list, right? The interest, and I don't want, and I'm sorry if I said it in an offensive way earlier, I'm not assuming bad intentions, but when you identify your interest, they're not your limits. They're not your lines in the sand. They're not what you will and will not do. They are your interest. So we may see some things that are not really interest or positions. Also, sometimes Lindsay intermingles solutions a little bit. So I think if whoever's opened this could kind of walk us through one at a time, you guys test it against, and if there's a moment where I might want to just say, hey, I don't know if that's an interest, you want to reword it, I'll just jump in. So whoever's sharing the screen, do you want to lead us on this?
Increase the amount of time available for PLCs to meet at the middle school and elementary school levels.
Which is a solution.
Right.
So this is a teaching moment, that's all, guys. It's just a teaching moment. And those were the ones that the group, one side or the other, I don't know who brought this forward, whether it was the association or the district, those bullet points were the ones that were already on the form. So that's okay, but that's a solution, but that's okay.
The district brought this forward, yeah.
Oh, is this actually our issue statement as
Yes.
opposed to the
Yeah.
notes? Okay, gotcha. So.
Yeah, and the notes are added to it. Lindsay just
We could
adds
probably
notes
better
into it, which
state
works.
that as
Yeah.
like,
But I think it is an interest that we
Adequate.
want to increase the amount of time.
well, we want to allow PLCs to happen, right? I mean,
Stephanie, I'm not sure how that's not an interest. I mean, the goal was to increase the amount of time for PLCs
Well,
at both the middle school and the elementary. I mean, that was our interest to do to when we began this process.
okay.
I think
Scroll back up to the issue statement. It's a kind of a gray area. Can we look at the issue statement?
I think the mutually discussed interest statements are the ones after the bullet
oh,
points.
so that was our issue statement.
I think
and then
what's
her
bulleted
notes.
is what
Okay.
you identified, and then I think Lindsay added
Yeah.
things that came out of the brainstorm.
So like, I think if you look at that one that's like being able to collaborate with others in your building, that is the idea, right? Like provide time for that to happen.
Yes.
So maybe more artfully stated and not stated as an interest, Stephanie, would be that fourth line there that says, our mutual interest is providing our, and I think we already have a solution at the middle school level, right? But
And it may be the word adequate time, guys. I don't want to
Yeah.
wordsmith, but I do feel like there's the area that you guys may be weak on when you get in areas that you're in disagreement is that interest is what protects you from doing something, which is not really correct, right? So then interest could be adequate PLC time.
Well, that's
Do
the
you
second
increase it? It
line.
turns out you did, maybe, but adequate, right? So just as
Provide
part of
adequate
training, it was
time,
don't
yeah.
embed solutions in your issue statement or your interest. And so we can move on. It's not a big deal, but just awareness for y'all. And then the next one is honor the work done by the subcommittee. That's probably pretty self-explanatory, right? And I am still on the bullet points because that's what whoever put this together decided those were some interests to start with. And that's probably, if you said, what is the interest behind that? It's probably teacher satisfaction and buy-in, right? Research-based, research-supported solution, because why?
because the research knows better than people just guessing.
So there's the
'Cause
real
we believe
solution,
in the
right? So
research, I mean,
is that maybe just like a quality solution that's most likely, to work? So I won't go through each one of these, but I do want you guys to shift your thinking about interest, because what I don't want you to do in the future is throw out lines in the sand as an interest. But the next one, make the PLC process authentic, provide, and then now that I'm reading these, now think about those solutions and do they meet this? Does this make the PLC process authentic? And remember, your solutions don't have to meet every interest, as long as it meets the main or the most interest, and it doesn't really harm any. Provide adequate time to allow PLCs to meet. You guys should be thinking, do either one of these do that? Provide elementary with the same amount of secondary. That is a solution, correct? Provide them with the same amount is a position.
Yeah.
A position or a solution, right? So, you still could do the work without that there. No, not create inequities. That's a good way to talk about the bullet point you just took out. Could have been, be sensitive to equities between middle and elementary. Not create inequities for families, unsupervised time. These are your
so
sort of
some of
reason
these
you're
come
interested.
from the potential for a late start at the elementary. That maybe we won't be testing then now.
Not create supervision challenges for staff,
Yeah,
guys.
that's
Does
another one
that-
of the same ones.
Yeah. Are those interests met with either one of those solutions that are out there?
I think that
There's
they're
not
not, they don't get raised because I think when the subcommittee met, correct me if I'm wrong, there was just a roadblock on being able to have any recommendation that wouldn't create a problem with those interests.
It would have an issue with the middle school program, but I think that can be worked out.
Gotcha.
Staff buy-in, how do you all feel about either one of these solutions in relation to the fact that there was a vote or a survey done? Do you meet that interest with either of these solutions?
I think the second one, you still provide additional PLC time and consistent PLC time, but it's not at a loss of plan time.
The staff buy-in, I was thinking about the percentages of the vote. So, you would, you guys were showing the buildings where it showed the percentages of the staff that voted for each option. If it was split, like 33, 33, 33, or maybe one of them was a little bit higher, that I know there's a winner in the sense if one was 40 and the other ones were like 30 and 30. But I almost wondered if we could then take the top two and have a second vote.
We did have one that was pretty split between 2 and 4.
Right. I just wouldn't want, that would make me think that the staff would, half of your staff is not liking the decision that was made for the whole building.
You're going to have winners and losers in this no matter what.
Right.
And I think we have two options before us, and we have the concept of a pilot, and we have the concept of not waiting until April, May to get feedback.
Okay.
And I think elementary, I think it becomes I don't think it becomes an independent, thoughtful survey if you come back again. Because I don't think there's values on, to me, I think option 1 and 3, one and two, if we could have found additional plan time, I'm not opposed to, the PLC being during that time. I just struggle with the loss of the plan time. Now, I think implementing this and coming back a year from now, I think our results could be really skewed towards, even more so towards 1 and 2, when people, like you say, have had the opportunity to go to the PLC Institute, to have dedicated time for it, to have dedicated time. And I think you could also do a thought exchange on that. Okay, people are probably going, Linda Seek is recommending a thought exchange, but a thought exchange with your elementary people. Hey, 6 months into this, what's working? What's not working? And we may even decide, or somebody else may decide at that point, that we want to tweak it even anymore from option 1, 2, and 3, and 4. I think a big interest on this is buy-in, and also I don't want to be discussing. But I think you can survey people to death where people are not going to believe that their voice is heard. We're just trying to survey
Or
again.
set up too much.
We're just going to try to survey till we get the answer that you want.
Sure.
Sorry, it took me.
On that idea of whether or not PLCs are, I don't want to say getting better, that's the basic way to say it, but do you have a way to have a baseline on how people view the effectiveness of the PLC before the PLC conference that you're talking about? Or before this change in schedule? In terms of going back to, is it helpful?
I think we
In other words, how do you measure if the pilot works without a baseline?
I think we're going to establish a baseline moving forward, because I think for some people, they're going to, for the first time, really be experiencing what a PLC is and does.
I like the
I
idea
just-
of testing it, sorry, I just trying to think as a teacher would without really any ability to do that, but if it is really effective, I was thinking about Linda's comment about how it can get a lot of your work done for you if it's really effective, and my best friend is actually a 9th grade math teacher and told me that her PLC is so effective that like her workload has like gone down a lot. So to me, then that raises the question, do you feel like you then have adequate plan time, right? So if after you pilot this and you test it, that probably does then change your lens on, I'm feeling like I don't have enough time, or actually I'm more efficient now with this new system.
Exactly. I think a year from now, we may have a whole lot of people that, I mean, obviously there are places within every building in this, elementary building in this district, where there's highly functioning PLCs, and they want to make sure that the schedule always allows them to be able to meet. And I believe in many of those places, they don't even, they know it's a PLC, but they don't think of it as a PLC. It's just the work that needs to get done. I think we could give the same survey next year, and we could also know that maybe in the meantime, we're creatively looking at ways with more time to add plan time.
I just want to build off of a couple of things you said, because I agree with a lot of it. We're not going to satisfy everyone with whatever we do, right? So we need to move forward. I think our subcommittee's belief is that we need to move forward with something. We need to get some traction going while there's a lot of interest and while the district has committed considerable funds to this institute. So I agree with you 100% there. And what this survey told me, while I hoped that more of our staff would have voted differently, this is just Mike talking, they're not there. So we can't ignore that. We can't ignore that, and we have to try to get that buy-in. And the only way to do it, we think, our committee, is through one of these recommendations, so that they do have some choice at their local level, at their building, where that principal can work with them, meet their needs, and then we resurvey. I do like the idea, and perhaps Dr. Gonzer is the right person to do this, where she designs, along with some other folks, some sort of mechanism to test at the beginning. Okay, where you stand, what are your beliefs on PLCs now? Do it at the semester, do it to the end of the year.
Yeah, Solution Tree actually has a few like
There you go.
surveys.
So,
And I would hope too, because there are people, I think, just because certain people have not signed up for the summer does not indicate that they're not interested in that. There's people that, went to Solution Tree and that have signed up, and others who have not. And then we have people that their summers are booked for whatever reason. I just think that's a reality. I think it's amazing that we have that high of a percentage. I think that should be celebrated, but I also hope that Dr. Gonzer and her team are thinking ahead. Where do we provide some PD opportunities for those who missed that? It's not obviously going to necessarily be Solution Tree, whatever, but we certainly have a lot of people that could come and share some, hey, here are the essentials as you get started. Because also what I think we have to be careful with is, well, you weren't there, figure it out on your own. That'll kind of doom the process as well. So,
So on the rest of the interest, I think those were just the answers you gave when we said, why does this matter? If you look at the interest, we haven't read line by line. I don't know that you test against those. Those were just, why does this matter? And it was really because PLCs are really important. Are there any other interests, though, you do want to try to test? What about that last bit about SPED?
I don't know how, I may need some help articulating this. We're finishing up year 2 in the pandemic, and there is a feeling, and it's not, there's a feeling of not from within our district, but from outside, the view of teaching being valued as a profession, teachers feeling, and I don't mean this from the district, I just mean the oversense, everything we've experienced in the last couple years. I think to shorten plan time coming out of these 2 years by some people would be perceived as,
A slight.
yes, as I've loved teaching, I still love what I do, but why, in order to experience this fabulous process, this fabulous PLC, does it have to come at a loss to what I already feel like I don't have enough of because I take so much home every day? And so I think that our interest is in the context of the pandemic. We don't want to honor people's experience of the last couple years.
And I think that's probably helpful then to have a pilot to go back and say, did this make it better? Did this make it worse? You know, are you getting more done in a shorter amount of time? Are you better prepared for instruction? Is the PLC functioning as it should? Because
Well,
you're
Linda,
right.
would you, if you scrolled up on interest, would you say that, like, when you all put staff buy-in, maybe at that time, we didn't peel back what all it includes? And is it a solution that, in other words, would there be a couple bullet points under staff buy-in? In other words, that where staff doesn't, sacrifice for it, right? Staff doesn't have to give up to get, right? Those kind of things. Would you say that what you're talking about is a little bit of a subcommittee or a sub-point under staff buy-in, where there's not going to be buy-in if it's not successful, but also if it takes away from something else?
If it's seen as at the expense of. And what we hope over time is that people say it enriches your planning if it's done right. But yeah.
Is it fair to say, with being conscious of time and kind of where we're at, that this group is willing to pilot one of these 4 options for next school year? Is that kind of where we're heading, or is that not the feeling and we're back to the drawing board? Or I'm just trying to get a sense of where we're at as a group after the last hour and 45 minutes, because we're coming to a close. I mean, I'll be glad to stay later if that's what you want, but I guess my point is I didn't know. Am I hearing you say you're willing to pilot one of them for a year, or?
I'm willing, if you want to know, I don't know if you want to, I'm willing to pilot option 4.
Okay.
So we need to think about how we seek consensus unless there's more conversation that needs to happen. Are we going till 5 or 5:15 tonight, guys?
5:15.
We had a 3:15 to 5 and a 3:15 to
5:15.
5:15.
Okay.
I don't have any problem with recommendation 2 based off of honoring just like the will and trying to promote buy-in. I do think, we might be very pleasantly surprised by a vote at the beginning of the year after some people had a summer and had some PLC institute, and they may decide overwhelming, like 1 and 2, is a good fit. But I think when you have that giant amount of staff saying we want option 4 currently, if we just cut that off, that is not a good statement.
So when you said you could do option 2, you mean recommendation?
I said
2.
recommendation 2.
Okay.
Which is a building choice between option 1, 2, or 4.
Piloted.
So does that impact the wording in the P&A, though? If
Yes,
Yeah,
it
we
does.
would have to have
After a year of
something.
piloting this, we've got, we're split 3 ways, 33% across the district with.
Would
I-
it be an
Go ahead.
MOU as a pilot, or would you have to change
No.
language?
we'd have to change.
So what I would do is I would add a clause under the appropriate section or sections of the P&A that are impacted by this. I think it would just be plan time. And I would put in a section that says for this school year only, and it would read, I mean, I would build off if we reached a consensus, which, whatever it was. And it would sunset like other things that we've had, but because it impacts a contractual rights, including staff meetings, I have to do it under staff meetings too, because that administrative right under the agreement is impacted, right? So it would be the give and the take, right? Like the administration's giving up to staff meetings, this is what's happening on the other side, and it would be limited and it would sunset. So if we did nothing during next year's negotiations, go back to the previous.
I can't live with option 2. I'm just telling you that. I can't live with it because the percent was the number of individuals. And you could have a high percentage in that building that wasn't the majority. And I'm just going to tell you that.
When would they
You know,
vote?
consensus is everyone deciding what they can support. So I would like if folks have some thoughts and you know sort of what you're tuning into as you know, your individual, as an individual on this team are thinking what you think is the best solution here, or maybe is it one that's not even here yet? Can we hear a little bit more from the folks in the room? I don't want it to be like, you know, negotiating back and forth, you know, chief negotiator feel. And I think just 3 or 4 people are being pretty forward about what they think they're starting to be attracted to in terms of the solution. Can the other folks that haven't really said much, do you need more info? Do you think the solution's not here? Or are you gravitating towards one of these solutions? If so, can you share?
I feel option 4 would be a good starting point, just because it's keeping the current plan time the way it is, and adding the PLC after schools or during staff meeting time. I think it would be up to a team whether they want to use the additional time to meet and kind of make it like an option 2 model with additional time. I think that'd be a team decision.
And again, this isn't your final, we're not taking votes. I'm just wanting to get more input. What are others thinking? Thank you for jumping in there.
I think it's very challenging. Not trying to play God, I don't have a problem making a decision, but when you're discrediting what 46% of the staff said, I'm far from an elementary guru. I think it's tough, and if we give them options and they take 3 different options, we're going to have a really tough time coming together after that, because I think they may gravitate towards this, they may like this, or it may be a wash. I mean, I don't know, but I think we're creating more headaches if we go with 3 different options. That's just one person speaking.
So are you saying you don't think the solution's out on the table yet?
Well, I'm okay. I would decide on an option. I'd be willing to support the majority. I would probably go with option 4, to be honest with you. If I were asked, that's what I would go with, because they were not quite more than double, but considerably more in option 4 than they were in the other options.
Well, and with option 4, as a team, they could decide to spend more time PLCing because they have a common plan time.
I guess
What other thoughts there? Go ahead.
I'm surprised and maybe confused. I thought we were moving towards giving our buildings a recommendation of 2 where they could choose between 1, 2, and 4. If we're just giving them an option of doing 4 or not doing 4, that...
Can you clarify that for me? So this is going back out. Can you take it to the next step here?
What do you mean?
What you just said here. So
how would that recommendation actually work? What are the mechanics of it?
yes.
Well, I think, we haven't worked it out. I think that's for this group. I mean, if that's how we ended up. But each building would conduct a vote at the beginning of the year and determine which option they were going to do either for the semester or for the year. That's how I saw it,
Okay,
John,
so let me ask
Abby.
a question
I mean,
that I truly need to be educated on. So what I've heard is that option 4 is not supported by the research because it doesn't provide the time in the way that the research says that you should.
Correct.
So is it valuable then to like have tested out, here's a research supported option, this building decided to go that way, we can get feedback from them. This other building didn't go that way, we can get feedback from them. Or to what extent does the research say, like, an imperfect timing of it is not that big of a deal, or is that big of a deal, I guess? Like, I truly need to understand that, I don't.
Also, I don't understand how we take this to the bargaining unit, because you have not established as a building yet what your plan is. So, right now, by majority vote, you're not having your vote count as to whether you're willing to give up your planned parent or not. You
Well, you
pick
guys-
option 1 or 2, or you pick 4, or you say, we're going to go with a combination of 1 and 2, then people can say, ultimately, when they ratify the contract or not, this is a deal breaker for me. But instead, we are letting the majority rule, building by building, decide whether or not you're giving up plan time. And I don't think that is right. I think there's intimidation. I think there's people, they won't be favored by the principal. I think there's people, we hear it all the time, they don't believe any survey that they give is truly anonymous, so they either don't take them or they vote the way they think they're supposed to vote. I think clear cut, we are asking the bargaining unit to depending on which proposal we would pick or recommendation, to give up plan time. But where you are in the district, you may have it and you may not. And
Is it plan time or is it student contact hours plan time? I want to make sure I understand.
Plan time after 3:30 is not plan time.
Well-
You can go home at 3:30. And people plan at home already.
So in these options, even with getting your plan time after school, after the student contact day, you're still getting less than 2:30 a week.
So it is reducing the weekly.
Because
plan
like
time.
1 week you'd have 250, because you'd have four plans during the day and 1 plan after school. That's 250. The next week, though, you'd only have 4 plans, because you wouldn't get a makeup plan because you'd have a staff meeting. So like the next week, you'd only get 4 days of 50-minute plans, and you wouldn't get a 5th day because you'd have your staff meeting instead of
So
a
is
makeup.
that
So that's
on
less.
average still less?
Yes,
So
a
is that
makeup. So
on
that's less.
average still less?
Yes, because it's 250 and 200, which is a total of 450, instead of 230, 230,
Okay,
which is
so it's
460.
slightly less. That's
10 minutes every 2 weeks.
Abby, does that sound right?
Well, someone's sort of looking at that. So Mike, you were saying that you felt like recommendation 2 is where you're sort of being pulled to, or you continue to look at giving the buildings the option of taking 1, 2, or 4, which is part of recommendation 2.
I'm not sure if I stated
Right.
that, but I thought that's where the group was kind of going.
Well, I've been trying to get a feel where the group's going. I'm not sure the
Yeah.
best way to do it because I'm just trying to expand.
And I
the-
thought that that's what our subcommittee thought, was that, hey, 49% preferred 1 or 2, 46% I can't talk, wanted 4, so let's give them a choice of one of those 3.
And so I guess, since we're IBB and we can propose other solutions, my solution is we pilot option 4.
So then, Linda, where you're at right now is you're saying,
I have to say, though, it doesn't matter what the data says if there's no buy-in, because it won't work.
who else has not spoken about what
I
they're?
don't think anybody's not spoken.
I have,
Well, he
I have,
spoke.
again, I haven't heard from everyone, actually. I've 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I only know.
You don't want my option.
No, I think, and by the way, here's the question.
Yeah, we do.
Option, recommendation 1, recommendation 2, something different, or something that's not even thought of yet, right? That's where we need to figure out where we're at, so we know what the work looks like for when you pick this up again. And I heard 3 people say they're leaning towards saying just go with 4. I heard somebody say they're leaning with go pilot 4. And I thought I heard Mike say he's leaning towards recommendation 2, and I haven't heard from anybody else to get a sense of where we go from here. Again, not a vote, because consensus is not voting. You don't have consensus. And I don't think you're going to have it in 5 minutes, but at least getting a sense of giving your colleagues your thoughts would help develop where y'all go from here to pick it back up.
No, I would just say this, I'm on board with whatever this team wants to go with, and I'll buy into consensus, honestly. And as a secondary perspective, I don't have a horse in the race, so to speak. So, Lindsay's not here, and she's our one elementary teacher that I think her voice is ultra important in this process. If you could pull up the interest, and because I would like to navigate a couple things there. The one thing that I just kept looking at as interest is develop a solution that does not detrimentally impact our families. Develop a solution that does not compromise adequate student supervision. And I think at some point, someone defined detrimentally, and someone defined adequate. It wasn't in this team, but at some point that was defined. And I guess my perspective is, if I had a choice, I'd look at option 5. Exactly how many minutes would we be looking at for a late start option?
The other
For PLCs.
interest that's not up there is pre-K impact.
So that's my perspective, because I think if you really look at the math of it, you're really looking at 25 to 30 minutes of a different start for elementary students.
So I feel like from my representation of the board and our principals, option 4, if it's just option 4, all we're doing is eliminating 2 staff meetings.
Right. It feels like a lot of
That's all we're doing.
no give on the other side.
No,
there's
you're not. You are creating a designated twice a month, 45-minute PLC time. That right now you have a 20-minute once a week. So it's a required time when everyone's to be there. It's on the calendar, you've got it counted, and it's 45 minutes. To say that you're not getting anything from it, that's not a true statement.
I don't think this statement was that you're not getting anything from it, but it was just, the administration is giving up that time when all the staff comes together. And so I think it's a feeling of a little bit of, we're trying, any solution, you talk about meeting in the middle, and we're trying to do that. But I understand where the concern on the other side is that what you're asking us to come to the middle on is something that's really valuable and that we, hold close.
Folks, when you talk about I won't get the word right, I'm going to call it a PLC conference. You guys are getting ready to do something that improves your PLCs. What's that called? Not this, but
The
I've been
PLC Institute.
Yeah.
Okay, the PLC Institute. The PLC Institute, is that a place where elementary teachers can tackle the issue?
No.
Okay. And the elementaries right now have 0 time for PLC, or how much time do they have?
20 minutes a week.
Which is just less than the other 2. And are your PLCs less functioning at elementary than they are the middle and high school?
I don't think there's a way that you could measure that at this point.
Are you fixing a problem for equalization and equity, or are you fixing a problem for quality of PLC? The assumption, this goes back to this is exactly, and I'm not taking a position, I'm pointing out a process problem. When you say increase PLC time is the way to fix something, that's a solution, not an interest, right? Increasing the quality of the PLCs at the elementary school, you guys are circling the drain around more time. Is that the only way you improve the quality of PLCs at elementary?
Well, currently with elementary, what did I do? Currently with elementary,
It's got to be on mute. It must have come off mute.
computer, I just did the sound.
That's good, Linda, we can hear you. It's not echoing for me.
Currently, elementary to TLC have to give up 20 minutes of plan time. High school has longer PLC time, and they don't sacrifice plan time. And then we've established that same schedule for middle school for next year. They won't have quite as much time as high school, but it's not at the sacrifice of plan time. So what we're looking for here is equity, in that because late starts were taken off the table, we're looking at a solution where you are reducing plan time even more for elementary.
Right, so I guess what I'm saying, it takes me a while, I'm slow coming to facilitate this. It feels as though the impetus for this is to seek some equity in terms of time for the elementary schools, okay? Right, for the elementary teachers, it's equity with what the other schools have, nothing wrong with that. Because you don't know that it's going to increase the quality of their PLCs. So the only way you solve this issue statement, if what's behind it is equitable time, then that's your only solution, and we're not right. In other words, like this seems to me like it is more about equitable time, and then the quality of the PLCs are going to come through other ways, hopefully this institute, right? So now if this is just about equitable time, is it a matter of just a function of calculating time in a way that doesn't make teachers feel as though you're taking away with one hand what you give with another, and make administration feel as though they're giving up staff meeting times, but teachers aren't giving up plan time? This is all really just coming down to equity solely, it sounds like to me. Perception of equity.
And there are unique challenges and barriers to equity at the elementary level. One being that the contract is not equitable in terms of contract day amongst the middle school. Like secondary works 20 minutes longer every single day. And then also just the student population, right? So supervision is a much more significant challenge, both either parents having them at home or them being in the building. So there's barriers there that is going to take a very creative solution, and frankly, one where both sides are going to have to, take some, be willing to do some things and give away some things.
So I'll tell you, who was it that corrected me earlier and said increase PLC time is the interest, it is the solution, it is the issue statement. In terms of facilitating, failed here, right? I sometimes have to get deep into your stuff to realize the approach that we're taking. This is tough because you want to increase PLC time for elementary schools for equity purposes. Okay, so that is tough.
So one thought or comment I have is there's clearly 100 other solutions other than the two that this subcommittee brought forward. And we talked about a lot of them. And you guys are thinking of some right now, I'm guessing. I mean, Dr. Dane mentioned he's got an option 5, or at least a brainstorm of one. I'm also hearing that there's just some non-starters for different folks here, and I may be one of them, right? So this is a little bit about time. I mean, do we kind of sleep on this and brainstorm some outside solutions? And
I think, she's got daycare she has to pick up.
My dog is trying to pass therapy level 1.
Okay, whatever. But I do think, whatever, stepping back and thinking and having some more time just to, I don't think we're completely that far off. I think we just have to get through some of it. And I think that we're not going to get there right now, and it would be good to hit pause and come back and work on it some more.
Yeah, I mean,
I agree.
I don't see a need to take a vote because I think it's become clear through discussion that we're not going to have a consensus on either of these recommendations or the solution proposed by Linda. Unless anyone thinks that we should take a vote on him, or
Me back to where I was about an hour and a half ago. I think
Linda, I think I'm with you.
I think we
I'm a
need
little
to-
slow on that. This is very traditional.
I think we need to IBB this because we have the work of the subcommittee from which, if we go through the process, we might have more buy-in or we might tweak that and find something else at. But I do not think we have IBB'd all potential solutions.
And Linda, I will say we didn't IBB this at all. I missed the boat. I was set back. I'm doing less facilitation. I'm not digging into what you're doing. The other committee work seemed to work, and I didn't dig into this. What happened was you're IBBing a solution. You're IBBing a solution from the get-go, right? You're not looking at how do we give more time. You are literally looking at how to give more time to elementary teachers. Right, that should be just your issue statement, which is a solution. How do we give more time? Give more time, right? So you would have to step way back and say, you're coming forward with a proposal. We need more time. Now you're just trying to IBB how you do it. That's just bargaining how you do it. That's just bargaining it out, right? I would need to hear, or you all would need to say, if you want to IBB this, you need to back up and redo the issue statement. What are you seeking to do by giving more time? And that's your issue. Like, are you seeking to improve morale? Okay, right? Giving more time is only one way, right? You've already limited yourself by saying giving more time is what you've been working on from the get-go, right? Are you trying to make them feel more valuable? If the only way to make teachers feel more valuable because they have less time than the other grades is giving more time, that's just one solution, right? Are you trying to make the PLCs better in grade school? Well, I was thinking all along you were. You guys are saying you don't even know if they're good or bad in elementary, right? So in other words, you guys have been IBBing one solution, increased time. So that's not really IBB. I just missed the boat on this one. You're just IBBing a solution. Increasing time should have been one solution to an issue statement that has not been developed yet. It may be, that's my take from here.
yeah. And we probably, as a note for ourselves in the future, and just to give some assurance to the PLC subcommittee, this has been how we've operated subcommittees, and I think we made, assumptions about how this one would work based upon how our past ones worked. We've had subcommittees do things that are too time consuming or not possible to do here, and that's been what they've done, is come back just like I participated in the special education workload subcommittee, and I came back with something very specific that I understood the team had to have consensus on, but it was highly specific. And so then perhaps what we should do next time we form a subcommittee is very clearly delineate what that work is. We want recommendations or we do not want recommendations. You're just to gather data and do work, or make advisory recommendations on just these things with these boundaries. Because it probably feels pretty crummy to be on a committee and then feel like, well, I did my homework and now it's not being accepted. And I think that's because we sped through and didn't talk about, hey, before we send this off, what is it that we're actually asking?
That's a larger issue at whole.
Yeah.
As
But also, that
teacher.
subcommittee was meeting prior to this year's IBB.
Sure.
So it is not functioned like others, because its work began and actually straddled 2 IBB years.
Sure.
So that is the difference. That's the difference.
You
And
guys, do revisit. You all are good enough to do it. I wasn't there when you went through all your issue statements. If you remember, that was the meeting I missed. When you look back at this issue statement, I won't ask anybody to share, but look back at the issue statement. I bet the issue statement is not a good one. How do we increase time or something like that, right? You still don't, it's not broad enough, right?
It's
Is this about how you?
how do we guard
Huh?
and protect time at elementary and middle school levels?
Okay, for what? That's what I would ask, right? Because why?
For PLC time.
For collaboration,
Okay.
for improved student outcomes.
To improve quality of PLCs or collaboration
To improve
time,
student outcomes.
right?
That's the goal of the work around professional learning communities.
So that's a much broader issue statement, and increasing time would have been one solution. You guys just got from the get-go, it was increasing time, right? So I don't know if it's worth backing up to that. There's a political reality, right? People wanting to, the political reality of wanting to make sure, you know, the folks you represent and the folks that work for you feel good and feel respected and treated equally, right? But that's a hard thing to IBB without going back to the whys. So can Rachel, before we end, do you mind just saying the next 2 dates I have on my calendar, can you make sure everybody's got them? Because there was a little confusion, I think, how much time we would block out for those days. Someone said we were supposed to keep one day open-ended. What was that?
I believe we have May 25th and May 26th from 9 to noon.
Okay, do we have May 5th from 3:15 to 5:15, May 11th from 9:30 to 3?
I don't have those.
May 5th is a Saturday.
Okay, I just wanted to see if I accidentally put those down and clicked the wrong dates or something. Nobody else has 5/5 or 5/11 as extra dates we threw in?
We had meetings on 4/5 and 4/11.
Okay, then I looked backwards instead of forwards. Sorry about that.
You're fine.
Okay, yes, I have 5/25 and 5/26, and you're supposed to have Russ on 5/25. So how do we want to pick this up? And is this the last non-economic y'all have out there?
Okay. I thought we kind of,
Did we say we were not tabling it, but gonna readdress it after, like in the summer, start in the summer? We agreed on on a committee, and there's gonna be, yeah,
there's,
another committee.
Linda, earlier you were saying that you felt like something you said an hour and a half ago. You said we could continue on and IBB this, and I don't want to throw, I kind of put a pin in that. And we just started jumping in here, but how would you see the continuation of this conversation? How could you continue the conversation?
I think we have to go back and redefine the issue, go through interests again, and generate possible solutions. Todd threw one out there, maybe thinking people will have other ones.
And did this issue statement come forward from the district or the association?
From the district.
How does this impact?
Well, then would you want it to have the district tackle restating your issue statement? And then we all help work on it when you come back with it? Is it still an issue? I think it must be, but. And is anything that I'm rambling about the fact that the issue is the solution making sense to anyone?
I mean,
And
I'm
that's our
asking
problem?
about, I mean, this is a strategic plan issue. It is pretty important to the board. And so, I mean, we have our next meetings, which are for compensation related issues, but ultimately, I don't think we're done. I mean, again, going back to, we have to have something we can ratify. I don't think the board is in a position to be able to ratify anything until this issue's got some agreement on it.
Yeah.
So,
And is the board's interest making PLCs better at the elementary level or equalizing time or both? Or I guess we just need to hear a little bit more at some point.
yeah,
Or that just feels sort of like a proposal.
yeah.
Yeah, the timing is, and this is no fault of anyone here, we've had productive conversations. It's the time is becoming of the essence right now. We feel a strong need to be able to communicate through the board to our community, whatever potential changes there's going to be quickly. So I don't know what the solution is. I just feel like it's appropriate to make that statement.
Thank you. Thank you, Mike, for that check. Yeah.
Guys, I apologize. I got to go to baseball.
Thank you, Dr. Dane.
Jill and Rachel, I'll talk to you before the next meeting, and you all will have maybe input from everyone, even if you start an informal email chain from who suggested that maybe people think on it, sleep on it. Linda's made a suggestion that's pretty concrete. Come back and sort of revisit the issue statement and then re-IBB. It doesn't cancel out the information or the work or the options that are out there, but it gets you working the process from a broader angle. I guess you can cite that between now and the 25th of May.
okay. Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and drop off, guys.
Thank you.
Have a good evening. Thanks for staying and going late.
Thanks, Stephanie.
Bye-bye.